One of Inside the Game right here on OneSoccer and the OneSoccer digital platforms. Pleased to have you along once again. Gareth Wheeler with you as we continue to be your isolation destination. More shows, more games, more coverage, hopefully more announcements coming your way in the coming days as well. So we appreciate you sticking with us and staying healthy and safe during this difficult stretch. We continue this intimate and interactive interview series. If you're new to it, welcome, as we shine a real positive light on some of the biggest and brightest names and people and personalities in the North American soccer really landscape. And what we've had is players and coaches, decision makers, Hall of Famers, administrators, you name it, on our program thus far. And today, what a guest coming your way. Another true legend of the North American game. He's one of the best American players of all time and a true leader both on and off the field. So he's not that much older than I am, but I feel like I grew up watching and following his career as it flourished before our eyes. It was always a badge of honor, something special during the 90s and early 2000s when you saw a Canadian or American player doing so well in prominent roles overseas. And this player absolutely fit the bill. His European adventure started just after World Cup 1994 as he signed with Bayer Leverkusen, who, by the way, is in the DKB Pokal Cup final, the German Cup final that we have for you on July 4th coming your way. He was the first American player to wear a captain's armband as well for a European club. And over the course of his travels, he was crowned a Scottish Premier League winner with Rangers, played in the Champions League as well. He moved on to the Premier League with Sunderland and Man City, all part of an impressive resume, playing for 6 clubs, spanning over 4 different countries and a 14-year playing career. For the U.S. men's national team, top grades, having represented the country at 4 World Cups, playing in 3 of them, including being named to the best 11 in what was an incredible performance throughout the 2002 World Cup. As a regular captain, his career unfortunately was cut short in terms of games played due to a series of injuries, which really tested his mentality. And funny enough, it's probably paid off today, having that kind of patience and understanding in his current role. He oversaw the New York City Football Club project, essentially turning NYFC from an expansion club into a perennial contender almost immediately. He plans on doing the exact same right now, having made the move to the cool, hip, trendy city of Austin, Texas, where he's hoping to build Austin FC into the next great MLS club as sporting director. All the while, his family remains in the forefront. They've experienced the highs and lows of the game of football, which inevitably come along with playing at that level. They've dealt with difficult times, heartbreak, loss as a family unit. And now, like always, as he always has been, he gets to watch on as a proud father as his son Gio really takes on the European club football landscape by storm. It's a pleasure to be able to welcome the great Claudio Reyna inside the game. Hello, Claudio. How are you today?
Very good, Gareth. Thanks for having me. Doing well, and looking forward to more and more soccer, which we're getting little doses of. But for all of us to get back to some normalcy, and thanks for having me on the show.
How are you and your family doing during this time? Are you all well?
Yeah, we're well. We're it's actually, for us, it's health-wise, everybody's good, and we've been able to spend a lot of quality family time, and just slow down a little bit and try to take our foot off the gas. We were forced to, and it's good. You get some perspective that what's important again, and being able to do things that we sometimes don't have time for. We say we don't have time for. So, but at the same time, we want to get back to working, to traveling. A big part of my job and also my life, and as a family, we like to travel and experience the world. We lived abroad, as you said, for many years, and it just so much to learn when you get to travel, and that's sort of been taken away from us a little bit. But we're happy, most importantly, that we're healthy. But certainly, given where we're at with so many different things in our world, we've been able to maybe prioritize some other things, which is good and positive for everybody.
Well, that's great to hear. Timing is everything. Obviously, your new projects down in Austin. Love the crest, love the logo, love the branding of the new team. But this is a completely new project, not only for you, but everyone involved. And then the pandemic hits. I mean, how has this affected your day to day, your preparation, you trying to get something off the ground in Austin?
Well, it's delayed our progress, but at the same time, it's worse for the teams that we're playing. There's no doubt about it. I was close to, all the meetings going on at MLS and trying to get back in, some way. And it's good to see that, in Orlando, with the tournament, the league will be up and running again. So I certainly got enough reminders throughout the COVID and the calls that we had that, we were able to just take a step back, look and learn. And, our being able to travel and scout and meet and watch players, was obviously halted. But I think overall we're again, we've been flexible. We've had to just sort of delay some of the hires that we probably wanted to have earlier.
Sure.
But just kind of taking a sort of, a seat back and seeing how this all evolves, what the games are going to look like. But at the same time, a big priority for us is building a team, and we have a lot of players in the pipeline. We've been scouting players. We've been talking to players on Zoom. We've had our internal Zoom and Microsoft Team conversations like everyone has, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But we've been also able to use this platform to talk to players, to tell them about Austin FC and who we are, because we're new to MLS, but what we're able to share to them is something very exciting. A real soccer city. I'm convinced it's got an opportunity, unlike few others and maybe any other city in MLS, to be the flag bearer of Austin FC at professional sports, and it's something we're proud of. So this crest is going to represent Austin FC and make so many people proud across Austin, the state, Central Texas, of course, and then throughout the country. And so everybody feels that excitement, and I'm just excited to be part of this new project. And having done it in New York, it's given me a lot of experiences, but at the same time, it's different. It's not a copy and paste, and what I
Sure.
did there will work in Austin. But I'm really looking forward to this new chapter.
Austin's got to be an easy sell, though. I mean, it's kind of cool watching the progress. You can, we'll put up the link of the website that you can watch as the stadium's being built before
Yeah.
our eyes. But I mean, what a music scene! I've been to Austin before. It's such a cool place. Spoon, Gary Clark Jr., two of my favorite,
Yeah.
bands, musicians. And so, what has the response been when you've reached out? Like, it's different because everyone knows New York City, and when you're operating the global landscape of the world of football, what do they know about Austin? Do players and agents really kind of know what your club, what the city's all going to be all about?
Some yes and some no, to be honest. And it's Austin, as you said, I've also heard for many, many years being this incredibly vibrant, growing city, that is evolved, and it's a beautiful place to live and raise a family. And I'd never been there myself, having traveled all over the country, but heard about it. And so when you communicate that outside of the U.S., it is with the idea we have that not too many people know about it. It doesn't have another professional sports. New York, Miami, LA are the cities that most Europeans travel to and visit. Then you probably after that have Chicago, Orlando's, and other cities. So this presentation we put together is explaining them how beautiful it is. But then you just have to go to the world we live in and say, Google Austin and places to live. And right away you realize it's an amazing place, and music and food and, opportunity. You have a university right in the middle. And now we're going to be, really excited to be a big part of the Austin community.
Amazing. It's kind of crazy just seeing expansion across Major League Soccer, and new teams in the mix this year. Yourself, Charlotte, coming into the fold in the next 9 months to a year. We'll see what happens with COVID, but in terms of marketing your brand and making sure that the gospel is spread about what you're trying to establish, how much more difficult has that been, Claudio? And are there things that you're trying to do in order to capitalize on the fact that you do have these assets and you do have time now to kind of dig in and maybe do things in a little bit of a different way?
Well, I'm fortunate to, tell our whole story as a club, as a city, our owners, our stadium, our training facility. It's nothing but first class. Very supportive, committed in the project, and so just telling them about everyone involved at the club, and that's what I've been impressed about more than anything. From before I got the role, and then now having worked internally, is a good group. Everybody's very excited about this opportunity, so we share that with the players. This is a club with huge potential and opportunity, and again, our training facility, our St. David's Performance Center, which is going to be ready for next year. Our stadium is going to be first class, and I think that sets a standard. It's very clear, in terms of the direction that the owners are setting with this first class environment that we want to build. So, our job and now in building the staff and the culture and that identity, it's real, it has to be authentic, it has to represent Austin. And so, we know very well what we need to do, and we're excited about this opportunity, and just can't wait to make it happen. And for me, it's new because it's a new city to live in, but the real potential, as I said before, that I see and is one of our goals, is to make this a soccer city, to make people think of Austin and think of soccer, and that's a place that you want to go watch a game. And we're really looking forward to that goal, and that's something we really believe in.
Here. Well put. It's interesting that you said that you were involved in the MLS discussions for the MLS is Back tournament. How involved can you be? The fact that your team isn't actually playing in the tournament, but I guess the well-being and the build and the presentation concerns all member clubs, really.
Yeah, so I don't have much of a say. It's for me just to listen to
Right.
the various concerns and issues that needed to be ironed out from the technical side, from the health side. So for me, it was more really to listen in. At the same time, though, there's conversations with the youth landscape and how that's going to shift, given that the USDA has finished, and now the MLS is going to take this space up. So there's also a conversation on that topic, which is very important. And MLS is at the forefront and has invested for years in coaches, facilities, and in youth soccer. So it only makes sense that we take that role. So that was another topic that we talked about. But really, just to kind of hear how we're just trying to get everyone back on the field and play, and because that's what it's about. And we're getting closer, and hopefully the games come off well, and we're able to have a season after the tournament as well.
Before we just step back and reflect upon the great career that you've had thus far, I know fans, all supporters, it becomes real to them when you see players in the kit, right? When signings start to happen. How much is that being kind of thrown off based upon the pandemic and the delays and just not being able to actually play games, and also the unknown internationally in terms of the resumption of leagues and contracts? I mean, it has to have muddied the water for you, made things incredibly complicated.
Yeah, it has. The market in general was at a grind, at a halt, and it was stuck during the COVID. Obviously, as everybody was taking sort of stock of what was happening league wide, and competition, and clubs, and how this would get up and running again. So the impact is going to be there, and now that the market's starting to move again in terms of players, you're starting to hear of players perhaps being allowed to leave for free or at a lower acquisition fee than before.
Mhm.
There are players that are waiting to see how their competitions get up and going, and or do they make a move now somewhere else? And so there's really so much still that needs to play out. But certainly the market is starting to move again. We're active. We've been speaking to players, and we want to sign players hopefully this summer if we can, in this window, which hasn't yet been exactly confirmed how we're going to have our window in MLS this year. It's likely going to be extended, which is the secondary window will be extended for more days, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. And so, we're going to be active. We're going to recruit. We're going to talk to players. We're going to, hopefully be able to watch players live, because it is important to watch players. And before you bring them in. So all that's starting to happen again, but it's slowly happening. Really, it's not where we ideally would like it. But again, during this period, you realize that everybody's going through the same thing. So it's hard to feel sorry for yourself because the issues that exist are for everybody.
No kidding. Aside from getting Matthew McConaughey on a Zoom call with a player, I mean, you need to see them play. There needs to be that practical, that intangible where you develop and are able to cultivate that relationship. I wish you the best of luck. At least, MLS right now, you kind of don't know what the structure's going to look like precisely in the coming months, other than the MLS's back tournament. But the CBA, I mean, you know what you're dealing with now in terms of player contracts, now that is at least being settled. So that must be reassuring for you and your future build of the squad.
Yeah, that's right. So the roster rules, salary cap are important, and we were there and close, and then everything happened, and so again, it's going to be, I think, officially announced soon, and they've agreed to it in terms of the details, us getting him, so we can really move forward with building the squad. But yeah, it's something that everyone's waiting to move forward, and gives us clear direction. There's not going to be any surprises for us. We
Sure.
kind of understand where it's going to be, and it's going to be consistent to what was in place before.
Very cool. Exciting times for all Austin, all the people of Austin, Austinites, and to see how this team's going to come together. I can't wait from afar to be able to watch this thing work itself out. Let's talk about you and your career and how you got to this spot after what was an incredible playing career, Claudio. I believe your father was from Argentina, and you moved,
Correct, yeah.
and he moved to the country. Was that before you were born, or were you born in the United States?
I'm first generation. I was born in the United States. I have an older brother, and he was also born in the United States.
And so, coming from an Argentine background, I mean, soccer's in your blood, but then the way that it manifests itself, that's something else. Did you catch on very quickly as a child? Were you drawn to the game immediately? How did that play out? How did your interest in the game begin?
Well, the interest, no doubt, was from home. So my dad, my roots being Argentine, and spending when I was younger more time there than I did as I got older because of school and sports, and just couldn't able to make it back as often as I'd like. And it's just what we talked about, what I grew up with in a very much American community that didn't have friends of mine who talked about soccer, knew about the World Cup, or just international soccer in general. We didn't have a domestic league of note, and NASL was around for a few years, and that was exciting. But when that went away, it seemed that it was like the last hope. When I grew up for soccer, it was so demoralizing to think that this league that was really gaining momentum was just taken away, and it was tough. I mean, I grew up really in a town that I was the only kid who played soccer seriously.
Wow.
Everyone else played other sports, so it was very much the club team I played for, coached by my dad. He didn't make money like coaches do today. That he did it because he volunteered, and he was 10 times better coach than all the coaches today out there, that are getting paid probably too much money. And we all had, mostly it was 3/4 of the team of first generation kids like myself, who only knew soccer, whether it was from Italy or Colombia or Argentina or Peru, Greece or Italy. That was what I grew up with. And so I had this soccer side of me, but at the same time, my dad, I think, was really good, and my mom as well, about integrating into American life as well. So I loved other sports. I love watching basketball. I grew up watching American football. My brother and I were, at the same time, while we were soccer fanatics, we weren't isolated from all these American sports. And that was something that, my parents, I think, made a really good effort to make sure that, we adapted and sort of adopted the cultures of what American, boys and girls did also.
It's kind of funny how the American, or even North American, I'll extend it to Canada as well, the soccer community, the cream rises to the top and it kind of sticks together. And it has over the course of your career as well. I believe you played prep school where you were undefeated I believe it was 65-0. Greg Berhalter was on your team.
Yeah.
At University of Virginia, Bruce Arena was your head coach. It's just kind of funny that, so many people in your relationships and careers have been intimately intertwined over the course of the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. So Greg and I grew up playing club soccer. My dad coached both Greg and I, and it was a great team. We had most of our entire team, went on to play Division I soccer, and a couple of us, like Greg and myself, professional soccer players. Bruce Arena recruited me in high school to the University of Virginia, and he coached, not only myself and many professional soccer players that out of the University of Virginia that had a career beyond that. And I think my dad and Bruce as coaches always kind of set a high standard for me. Um, Always believe that I can, achieve more and be better. And, at a time where there was no professional soccer, Bruce was like, you can go make a living doing this. You can be a pro. And that's how the times have changed. I mean, I was in college, I was a freshman, a sophomore, and I really wasn't sure where or how I can become a professional soccer player. It wasn't like a player today who's 11, 12, 13, I could already see that I can become a professional. I can really see the path. I didn't know what that path would be when I was in college. So again, the coaches had a big impact on me, teammates, and yeah, it's interesting how that plays out. Again, it's just soccer is a big part of your life. So Greg, always in Europe. We live also not that far away from each other, and we always talk about it. We watched it, we studied it, and from a young age, we love watching soccer from Europe and getting videos and magazines and any way we can get information, which was totally different than how information is getting today.
Yes.
We would want it. We
Yeah.
loved it. So
And that's what's incredible, because up until 1994 and the World Cup coming, and maybe some of the younger generations can't appreciate what a turning point that was for soccer in America at that time. It gave players an opportunity, something to build towards, and careers were launched out of that. You picked up your first cap that year in 1994. I mean, what did it mean to you to play your first game for country at that time and then grow and build towards that World Cup part of the squad?
yeah, it all happened pretty quickly because I was playing, at the University of Virginia in December, and we won the national championship. And then a couple of weeks later, maybe even sooner, I was invited into what was the uh, sort of a national team residency camp for players that didn't have club teams. And again, just a reminder of how things have changed. And so I was so excited. I was just happy to be there. But of course, at the same time, it was I quickly switched on to this is now my profession. This is my job. I took everything more serious, and I wanted to compete and play. And again, this was like I was at the beginning of making my living. So I went there, and I wanted to prove the coach and everybody from day one that I belonged, and I wanted to make the World Cup team, and I wanted to go to Europe. So I got the chance against Norway, my first cap, and I subbed in and I made an impact. And that's all you can do as a substitute, especially when you're younger, is give energy, make an impact. And I was able to do that. And then I continue to get game time, and work my way to making the squad. And from there, and I'm really grateful always, is that U.S. soccer and the national team was the main platform for me to get to Europe. That's
Right.
where I was watched, a young player playing for the national team. It caught the eyes of teams in Europe and was able to, allow me to get to Europe.
Uh, you suffered a hamstring injury, which meant that you couldn't really play in the World Cup, but you were part of the squad. What was that experience like for you? It must have been kind of an eye opener. The fact that the world was in America's backyard, your team, you guys became rock stars, players on the team became household names across the country. Yet your participation was limited. So how did it work out for you?
Yeah, it was a blur in general because there was so much excitement, and like all World Cups, they come and go real quickly. But leading up to it, it was amazing, and just to think, wow, this is coming to the U.S. As I mentioned before, growing up in the U.S., not really yet being a soccer nation at the time, and to be able to host a World Cup was beyond any dream I had when I was younger. and to be there, even though I was injured, I was working hard every day to get back. I was fit for the round of 16 game against Brazil. So I was able to get back and was available. I didn't get in, but the experience still being around some of the best players in the world, it really inspired me, and I just inspired me for my career, and that I wanted to get back to a World Cup and play and represent the U.S. And but it was certainly this springboard for many of us, and for me, it wasn't. I wasn't as recognized as other players. I was one of the younger players, but it certainly helped be a springboard for me to become a professional soccer player. And it was for me also the certainly this new moment for a national team player where, we played in front of bigger crowds after that. There was more interest, and it was certainly a big step forward for soccer when you look back in the United States.
I mean, that Brazilian team obviously went on to win that tournament. Some incredible players. You mentioned it. You were one of the younger players on the team. What were you, 19, 20 years old at that time, Claudio?
Yeah.
Did you feel like you belonged?
I did, I did, and I was disappointed with what happened in terms of my injury, because leading up to the games, and actually our last game before our first group game was against Mexico in front of 90,000 in the Rose Bowl, and I played and we won 1-0, and I played really well. I played left midfield in a 4-4-2,
Mm.
and so after that performance, leading up to it, I felt I was going to play. So absolutely, I felt I belonged. And then I got injured, and I don't know if I would have started, but I would have certainly subbed on one of those games. And so for me, it was disappointing. But I guess being young, I thought, okay, I'll be back. I'll get an opportunity, and I did. So, but I certainly did feel at that point, that age, that I belonged to be there, and I wanted to prove myself, and didn't get the chance, but again, move on for sure.
One of our previous guests on the program, Landon Donovan, joined us, and he famously made a move to Bayer Leverkusen. But you helped pave the way because you were there first, signing with the German club out of that World Cup. How did that signing come to be? What was their interest elsewhere? How did they discover your talent and were able to bring you over?
Yeah, so there was interest from other clubs in Spain, in Portugal, but they were the ones who really stepped up and showed most interest, and I was read up on the club and knew enough about it that it was a great club, and so I went over there and joined into preseason after the World Cup. And Paulo Sergio was a recent World Cup winner. He was on Brazil. Bernd Schuster was on the team, and who was someone I looked up to growing up. And Rudy Fuller was on the team. So I had all these experienced players around me that was incredible to help my foundation as a professional soccer player. I'd always said if I'd do it over again, I'd choose going to Germany, because it was for me such a professional experience in terms of what it takes to be a professional soccer player, and the way you work every day, your conditioning, your eating, and so it was very eye-opening for me. And I almost really, in all honesty, I always tell this story, but I started from zero again when I got to Germany, because it was very new to me, that kind of experience of being in a locker room with guys and everybody's like kind of looking out for themselves. Before that, every experience I had in college and the national team, everybody was, while you're competing against each other, but you're still, there's a understanding, of you're either at the same age when you're in youth teams or you play for the same country. And I went there right away, and, I had to earn respect. People didn't talk to me. People ignored me. And that's when I was like, whoa, I got to wake up here and grow up quickly if I'm going to survive over here. So it was an amazing experience.
Well, was that because you were coming from America, or was that just because you're a
Yes.
young player, just having to earn your stripes? Because
It
it
was
could be
America.
both.
Yeah. It was the US. It was absolutely, we were not a country that the world respected. It was just the reality of it. And, you had to earn it. And they just, looked at Americans as baseball, basketball, American football. And, and everyone was always say like, they don't really like soccer in the U.S. And you always heard that. And so it was frustrating. I think there was a whole generation of us. There's so many guys that from my generation that went to Europe before me. And of course, there's guys over there now, but in my generation, and we all had a chip on our shoulder because we all got the same noise and kind of what we heard all the time. And so I think that's kind of what helped shape the national team in that generation, is that we really wanted to prove ourselves over and over and all the time. And when we played certain countries, we wanted to get that respect. And I think that's what we did over time. And the opinion and the views on the American soccer player has changed for sure over the years.
No kidding. And it probably made your group as both individuals and as a collective better for that. And you make the low move to Wolfsburg, and you become the first American-born captain of a European club team. I mean, were you aware of that at that time? And it seems like based upon that, at least you were able to win people over relatively quickly based on your demeanor, your work ethic, your leadership. Yeah. Is that how it played out?
Yeah, I mean, it played out that people respected that I'd learned the language, so that was very important. So I spoke German fluently when I was there. Right now, it's probably not fluent, but I understand it really well. But and that helped. And then I was I was someone who always didn't say much, but when I said something, I think people respected it, whether it was the coach and how I said it and when I said it, and so over time, the players around me. Wolfsburg was a team that at the time just came up from the second Bundesliga, and it was playing in the Bundesliga, and had a lot of players that were sort of like fighting to get that respect. And so as the group dynamic shaked out, they kind of realized I was one of the leaders, and the coach did as well, on the field, off the field. And then what was really neat about being voted captain is just that it's your peers, your teammates that vote you. And it's not the coach just picking you. So that's something that to me always, I felt, even with the national team, I remember players saying, you should be the captain, you should be the captain of this team. It's a no-brainer. And so it's not something that I wanted. And I think just through, how I conducted myself and just trying to be a good teammate, in a lot of clubs, I was vice captain. I got the opportunity to wear the captain's armband at Rangers, at Man City, at Sunderland, while the other main captain was either suspended or injured. And so, again, I think always is probably helped shape some of what I do today. And being a leader is that just treating people, honestly, working hard. And then at the end, you also have to perform, and people need to trust you on the field. And I think that's for me really important values as a player. So going back to Germany, when the players voted out from them, and that's always what you're trying to do. You're just trying to, at the end, those are your guys you go to war with and your teammates. And if you gain their respect, I think really everything else is, doesn't really matter.
Amazing. I want to take a step back to your U.S. men's national team playing days in a moment, but Rangers came calling on the back of some really good performances. Glasgow's a great city. If you haven't been there, once this thing opens up, go. But you need to have thick skin. It's a different type of football, a different type of high pressure atmosphere, isn't it? Did you have any hesitation about joining Rangers, a big club, at that, especially at that time? What was going through your mind at that time of making that move?
Well, it was a great opportunity, a huge club, and I was playing with Brian O'Neill at Wolfsburg, Scottish former teammate who came through Celtic's academy and played at Celtic, and he told me, he's like, do you know how big? We were really close friends, and he said, do you know how big of a club they are? I said, yeah, I do. He goes, oh, just let it, in case you didn't know, it's not that I want you to leave Wolfsburg, but they're a massive club. And I said, no, I know. And really everything about it, the manager, Dick Advocat, called me. He was pretty straightforward and to the point, as Coach Advocat is. And that meant a lot to me, that he called me and wanted me. And so, for me, it was going to be really difficult because it was a really strong team. Every day was going to be tough for me to break into the team. And, while the Scottish Premier League isn't one of the top leagues in the world, playing at Rangers was going to be a new challenge for me because, the locker room was loaded with talent. So that was my personal challenge there, and kind of I felt really a next step, an opportunity to play in Champions League, and I did, and it was amazing time. Great friends, teammates. The fans are the as good as any in the world, and I had an amazing, as you said, Glasgow is one of our favorite places we've ever lived, and beautiful people. And yeah, it's intense. It's intense when you play, and you better win. And it's intense, obviously, within Glasgow. Between the old firm is the best derby, the most heated derby that you can ever play in. So it was always special to be a part of that.
Ibrox is an awesome place. You need to go if you haven't. But you warmed yourself up to the great support up there relatively quickly. Mere months after you joined, you scored a goal to qualify for the Champions League against Parma. Gigi Buffon, like he was playing yesterday in Coppa Italia. Did you
I
see that?
know.
He was playing. I'm like, he's still playing, which is unreal.
Crazy. Yeah.
Do Rangers supporters still remind you of that goal?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, it's the Rangers supporters. When you're a supporter, you watch every single game. You remember those moments. If you were in Ibrox, I remember the noise level that day. I'll never forget it. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. So yeah, absolutely. They talk about it. It was a special moment. We were competing against the best players, the best teams in Europe, and they haven't had that for quite some time. And so it was I run into fans that say I was 15 years old at that game. I remember watching you score that goal.
Amazing.
And that certainly is pretty cool. And it was an amazing tie for us to beat them. And as you said, he's one of the few players that's still playing that I can tell my kids, oh, I played against him. So I'm running out of him. So I'm glad he's delaying his retirement, because he's still someone I could say that I played against.
I mean, these heated derbies, there's nothing like the old firm. Well, there's some worldwide, but there's very few that can be replicated in terms of that kind of passion and what it's like to be involved in one of those games. Celtic Rangers, what's it like to be part of an old firm derby?
Well, there's a different feeling a week leading up to the game, just in the locker room, that you can just sense. Every old firm game is different leading up to it, and what it means, and just the staff, the people around the city. So the news, the media starts following it. So it just starts bubbling up earlier, and you could feel it, you could hear it everywhere. And the game is 100 miles an hour. There's not the best football played. You have very little time on the ball. And it's it comes and goes so fast, the game. That's all my memories of the games were like, it was over before it, it felt like it started. And the intensities of the tackle, you can't pull out of any tackle. And it's really special. The difference in advantage and disadvantage to playing home and away is amazing. And again, it means so much when you pull up to the stadium. You feel it, obviously, rolling up to Ibrox, that intensity of your supporters and what it means to them. You obviously then see it at Parkhead when you come as an away player. All those memories, players never forget. And of course, the battles on the field are really special. So they are as good as any, and if it's not the best derby in the world, it's one of the top three for sure.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. After a couple years in Scotland, your family's settled, you have good friends, you're having success on the field. The lure of the Premier League kind of hung over your head, and Sunderland came calling, made a big money move for you. Was there any hesitation making the move south at that point? Did you really contemplate just staying in a situation that you're all comfortable?
Yeah, absolutely. It played out for a while, and there was 4 or 5 Premiership clubs that were interested at different stages throughout about a 6-month period. And we're coming up to watch, and I was playing really well, and it was in the Champions League. So there was interest, there was new interest, and it just for me was not something I was desperate to do, because I was so happy at Rangers, and the owner, chairman, David Murray was great to me and wanted to keep me and was prepared to match anything. And so it was eventually for me, looking back is like, will I get this opportunity to go again? And I thought this next step, this next challenge of playing in one of the best leagues in the world. And so as this dragged on or played on, I said, yes, I want to do this. So it was really for me a personal, footballing challenge to want to play in the Premier League. And you just don't know if you'll get it again later. I was really happy
Right.
at Rangers. There was a commitment to continue to compete at a high level, and they continued to after I left. But it was just that at the end, it was just the lure of the Premiership. Sunderland at the time was top 10 team, was doing really well, and they at the end came in and made the offer, expressed the interest, and went forward. So I don't look back at all, because again, this next challenge was there for me that I really enjoyed.
And they're two big clubs that you played for. You're right. Sunderland at that time was a very talented team. You went on to play for Man City after. I mean, the experience must have been incredible, but at the same time, injury followed you. Was it just circumstance, Claudia? Like, you must look back and say, you know what, I know I could play at the highest level, but just injuries held me back. Is that kind of how you feel about your experiences in both places?
Yeah, I think later in my career, in England, I had I tore my ACL after the World Cup, and it was about 11 games, 12 games into the season, and I worked so hard to come back, and then it was just sort of began like a niggle here, and a hamstring or a calf, and it's quite common for players because you're adjusting to your sort of new gait and the way you
Right.
run. And even though you can do everything, it's something that you notice right away with players who come back from injuries like that, is that you pick up some other little injuries along the way, and that happened. And then again, I got a little bit unlucky with an injury that was again misdiagnosed, that kept me out longer than I needed to later on. But I learned so much about it that now it just such different times with the like how you can take care of your body and the things that a soccer player has in terms of workload. And I was traveling back and forth all the time with the national team for years, and there was no doubt that played a huge impact on my injuries as well. And probably there was things I could have done. There could have been some workload management that could have been done, but that was a different time, and you just sort of like played on. And I remember playing with a broken ankle for 4 games, and not too many people knew about it except the head coach at Man City at the time. I eventually had to get a surgery on it because I fractured a small bone. And so I just played because the club needed me, and I played. And then I
Right.
eventually said, I got to get this surgery. So, it was a different time, and I certainly learned. But no, I don't really regret anything. I played, so many great opponents and teams in the Premier League against all the big clubs and players at the time. And, again, I reached such a high level there. It was great.
You were very popular, especially among City supporters. They referred to you as Captain America before Chris Evans. They could cast you in those films. See, if you were playing today, Claudio, that would have been branded all over the place. There'd be hashtags Claudio Reyna, Captain America, all over the place. It must have been wild, especially at City. The transformation from where they were when you were playing to the group where you were part of with New York City FC and the behemoth, really culminating in Aguero in 2012. I mean, your relationship is quite special with that city and that club, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, the transformation, as you said, with Manchester City from my time there, where it was the club that really didn't threaten anybody, and it was everybody's almost like second favorite team because they played, really exciting soccer, and
Right.
the fans, were always a great traveling bunch, and and had their moments where they, achieved success in the 70s and 80s, but it was just a club that didn't really ever achieve what it could have. And then all of a sudden, Abu Dhabi comes in, and the whole mindset changes, and over time to what it is today, it's all the big clubs have been certainly threatened, and Man City is for real. It's an amazing club, one of the best teams in the world over the last 5 years. Before that, establishing itself within England. And it's just interesting to see that again with time from when I played to what it is today. And, everybody talks about that it's just money, but it's not that. But people also forget that, when I was back in the Premier League, the teams that won and were champions were also spending the most money. So again, they've really shaken the league up. I think also with their approach to how they've developed a group of clubs is very unique, but very strategic in terms of how they build the club, the brand. And so for me, it was a great place to learn, to see, and such a high standard of how they execute, on the field, off the field, and while they grow as well as a group. So, it's great to see. Man City is certainly a club that's not just for a club that's doing well today, but also built for the future.
We just have about 10, 15 minutes left, Claudio. I mean, although exposure was growing in the mid 2000s of the English game, the Premier League was more readily available in America. It was really your contributions to the US men's national team and playing and being part of 4 World Cup squads that really made you a household name amongst American supporters. Really, 2002, that was the special time, wasn't it? That World Cup run in South Korea, Japan, where you beat Mexico 2-0. I still say it. You were robbed against Germany. You were probably full value for the victory that day. Handball, Torsten Frings on the line. That
Yeah.
still a VAR was, around today. And you were named as, part of the best 11, the team of the tournament as well. Just how good were you in that team playing at that time? And when you look back on that tournament, is there a lot of what could have been that mentality? Because you would have played South Korea in the semifinal. I mean, the path was there to be taken all the way to a World Cup final in 2002.
Yeah, it would still look back and think, what if? I think we all do in that squad, because it was an amazing run, and a great squad of players. But I think it started with the failure we had in '98, if I'm honest, and that was our inspiration. That was what motivated us, because I've always felt that the squad in '98 was also a good one, filled with really good players, a lot of impactful players that played at a high level, yet failed because it didn't come together as a team. It didn't have leadership. It didn't have direction. All the things that just are pretty obvious. I think you can dissect things as much as you want, but it was pretty obvious. And then I think Bruce came in and used that as that sort of momentum to get us going and pick us up through qualifying, and then to get to the World Cup. And prior to the World Cup, we had the 9/11 in 2001 that
Right.
certainly hit us hard as Americans. And for me, being from the New York area, I grew up in New Jersey, was another layer of motivation that we had. We wanted to really fight for the U.S. and then we had quality, and things came together, and you need a little bit of luck too. But we were at the end unlucky with the decision that wasn't called for us. And we felt the whole time, I think once we got out of the group, the feeling was, and we beat Mexico, is that as we should, was that we're staying here all the way. We're going to go to the finals, and we're going to win. And that was really cool, that we had a group of players that were in meetings, on bus rides and just together, that truly believe that. And that's probably wild for an American fan to think that today, but that's the truth. We were like, we're going to win this thing. We had people like Frankie Heiduck making everybody laugh, and just telling everyone, we're going to win the cup. We're bringing the cup home. And it was the feeling. And so we went into that game, and we had so many good players, and so you think of the what ifs, and you also hopefully for everybody to realize that while we do have a lot of work as a country to continue to improve and catch up with the leading nations, in a tournament format, you need a group to come together, and you need these things to happen, and obviously you need talent. But that was the modern history of World Cups, and we're almost getting to a semifinal, and could have and should have and deserved to. And after the game, even the Germans admitted and were honest that we were the better team. And so it's amazing. And that's what you need to realize as a national team now that this is certainly possible for any team leading into a World Cup. You have to have belief, you have to have leadership, and a lot of things need to come together. But again, it all started for as a player, and as many of us, the failure we had in the World Cup before that.
Oliver Kahn was unbelievable that day, too,
Yeah.
by the way. Just an incredible performance. I can't imagine anything being as special in sport as leading your team out as captain at a World Cup game. Describe that moment for those that, might look at you and say, wow, that's got to be unreal just in terms of looking back on your career, the fact you had the opportunity to do that in multiple World Cups, Claudio.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the highest honor you could have as a soccer player, to be the captain, and what it means around the world. And my kids always see me now, like when the World Cups and Olympics come around, like for me, the games are obviously awesome and fun, but the national anthems and what it means to play for your country is
Totally.
special for everybody. And so that's the coolest part. And to walk out first and exchange and do all that, that's really special. So I never took that for granted. And the much what we mean as a country always changes around the world. So what it means today to be a captain, represent the national team, unfortunately, and I think some ways has a slightly altered meaning, but at the end we can't we can't forget. And that's what I always felt like for me, what soccer in this country did for me. So that's what I try to think about, what it did for my family, what it did for my dad and my mom. And so, when I walked out, those were the thoughts that I had. It was like, this sport and this country, gave me this opportunity. And so it was just a lot of pride to be able to play and represent the national team.
You ended up retiring from your international career after the 2006 World Cup, where young players were coming through, the likes of Michael Bradley. And 132 caps is still top 10 in U.S. men's national team history. And the team today is playing a whole lot more games than you did back then. Is there a career highlight representing your country that sticks out, that's top of mind for you? Or how do you reflect upon that?
Well, I think, yeah, it's hard, but I think like your first game is always special. Your 100th game is special. Your first goal, and then some specific games. We played Jamaica. We were the first U.S. team to represent the United States after 9/11, and we ended up qualifying that day at Foxborough. Stadium, the old Gillette Stadium. And then the Mexico game in the World Cup, our bitter rivals in can't get much bigger than that. A knockout game against Mexico, winning that game, moving on halfway around the world. And you'd mentioned it before, like what it meant to soccer. And that's when I was like, whoa, like I grew up, as I said before, in the time when soccer was still trying to, get some notoriety, some attention in the newspaper, anywhere. And then people were telling me back home, halfway around the world, like, oh, you guys are on everything and everybody's watching, everyone's getting up. And when I got back, all the people that were congratulating me and people that recognized me in the streets, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. So it felt like, again, 94 was this step and 2002 was this step. And this was more of a step of respect, I think gaining that respect again, and so many different players performed well. I made the best 11, but we had so many good young talents.
Right.
DeMarcus Beasley, Landon Donovan, experienced players. Casey Keller was our backup goalie. We had Brad Friedel. The team was, John O'Brien, Ernie Stewart. There was really good players on the team. So I think overall people thought, wow, that's a good team with a lot of good players. And I think that's at the end what you feel proud about.
What's super cool is that you, as an American footballer, your wife as an American soccer player, now you get to see it all or experience it all through a different lens with your son Gio, representing, his country, doing so well in club football. There must be a great deal of pride there, Claudio, because you've been there, but now you get to experience it in a whole different way.
Yeah, it's the best. It's so much more fun in some ways, but also a lot more nerve-wracking, of course. But it's at this stage, he's a 17-year-old, and so he's still a boy to me. He's my little boy. he is still a little boy, but he, knows, and he's very much always known that, when you step on the field, you got to play like a man. And I think that's been something that's nice to see, because it's at such a young age. I remember going through it, as I said before, 20, and that was difficult. That was a daunting sort of experience, to walk into a locker room full of men, and that this is their life, and their livelihood, and he's doing it at 17. Running out in front of 80,000 fans, playing against Paris Saint-Germain, and in all these games, it's just, I just sit back and just, it's amazing, proud of him. And everything he's achieving is just so amazing. I'm just, everything he's learning at this age, you just, you're depositing these experiences in your memory bank, that'll just be priceless for him as he matures through his career.
All parents say your kids surprise you in a number of different ways over the course of their lives, but is there something about the way that Gio's approached the game, or maybe his play on the field, that's even surprised you as his father?
Well, yeah, I mean, as a dad, to see him grow into the player he is has been amazing, because, and I mean literally, his physicality of being, close to 6'2",
Right.
is not something. I'm 5'9", in my shoes, I think, in my soccer shoes. So, then seeing him, with this, like, everybody, that your physicality, your size kind of, is part of who you are as well. So, he's a different type of player, but he's just confident, and, always, loved playing, but he also wasn't pressured, always made sure he had fun, and he's still in that same way. Like, we just, we catch up sometimes for 45 minutes to an hour when I get up and have a FaceTime, and yeah, we're just talking about random things, laughing, and just want to make sure that he still understands. He's a 17-year-old, and he's got, almost in some ways, no pressure, and that's kind of how he's approaching it. He's like, all these other things of, like, that noise that exists out there around him is something that I just talked to him, is just that, you just got to focus on your good habits and routine, being a good teammate, getting better. And the one thing he does have, and I always talk about this, and he's just competitive. He wants to play. He wants to win. He's just, everything he does, whether it's a 5v5, he's just always been like that. He doesn't like to lose, and that's a special quality. I think it's almost not liking to lose versus wanting to win is one of his drives. So, but it's great overall, just kind of like making sure that it's he's getting the right advice and support throughout this whole journey. But I'm so proud of him.
Well, so far so good. I mean, what's cool is you're talking about respect of American or North American footballers, the way that your son, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, all featuring prominently in the Bundesliga, a young Canadian, Alphonso Davies. I mean, this bodes well for North American players playing in Germany, and bodes well for the region as well. That must be a ton of fun to watch as someone who's invested themselves in American football for so long as yourself, Claudio. This must be quite the time, not only as a parent, but just as, a North American soccer observer.
Yeah, it's a really special time, and I think there's been eyes toward the talent in this region for many, many years. And I've been around youth soccer now for the last 10, 15 years, and watch players and teams from around the country, and in Canadian teams as well. And there's so much talent, and I always feel like it's our responsibility, right? It's the adults, it's the coaches, it's the clubs, it's to make sure that we're pushing this in the right direction, and because there's no excuses. I mean, the players are there, and I feel that maybe at times we've let it down a little bit in terms of, like, the pathways, the structures, whatever it is. But it's certainly exciting to see. I mean, Alphonso Davies, what he's doing in Bayern Munich, the Americans that are over there, the Americans and Canadian young talent as well, MLS, that are not just getting minutes, but impacting teams now, starting for teams. So the homegrown talent domestically that are now on MLS teams are cemented in teams and starred and are scoring goals. And so that's that's again a really good signs for the future, that there is a huge talent pool here in the U.S. and in Canada as well.
Just as we wrap up, Claudio, just a quick thought on your time at New York City FC and obviously transitioning to Austin. I find it incredible for an expansion club, not only yourself, but Atlanta United have come into this league and raised the standard of play just in terms of the quality on the field. I mean, under your watch, New York City FC reached, I believe it was the conference semifinals in 4 or 5 seasons, amassed more points than any other club. What's the key to success here? And is it finding the right players? Is it finding the right coach? Because it was quite fascinating watching from afar just how quickly success came to your club at that time.
Yeah, there's so much, and I think it's a team effort, a staff. I was surrounding myself with really good people, and your recruitment of players is important. And we learned as well. You don't get them all right, but then that process gets better. The academy was an area of opportunity in the talent pool, and so we built that, and with great coaches and identity similar to our first team, and something that we were really proud of. We had a great fan base that understood soccer as well, and the New York fans from the first day when we had our inaugural game against New England. That's something that jumped out at me, was the understanding of what was happening on the field, and that knowledge. So, it was great to see it all come together, and it was about really behind the scenes setting high standards, and I think the teams that have had success probably, you don't get to see what happens behind the scenes, but in terms of, like, again, a professional standards, clubs that look after the players, whether it's, again, the facility investment, the coaches, the staff, the off the field treatment of players. And that's something that, MLS teams are improving on yearly, is that it's not just what you do on training, but all the other areas that are important. So, we took great pride in New York in making sure that if a player came, they didn't want to leave, because they're going to talk about their experiences in New York, and you want to make sure that they're talking well. And so, it's a lot of fun, and it's not easy. Again, you have to make tough decisions along the way, and with players, with coaches. But always, for me, it's simple as in my leadership role, is trying to always think about the best decision for the club. And if you have that in my role, I think you can feel good about everything you do. And, but there was so many people that deserve credit, from the DPs in the beginning and the standards they set of training, to, all the academy coaches, to the coaches that, worked in the first team, the fitness coaches, the medical staff. You need it all to work. And it was a good time there for sure.
I know you got to run. You mentioned those DPs, Villa, Lampard, Pirlo, some exceptional players coming in. Is that the way forward for expansion teams like Austin? Having the right mix between the youth development, the academies, but still having those big name star players to help ease the burden of some young players as the pressure continues to grow, playing and succeeding in Major League Soccer.
No, I think it's not important. It's not necessary. It could fit into the strategy of every, any team. But at the same time, if you look at Atlanta, it was different. LA had one big recognizable name. In Vela, we had 3, and part of that was a sort of decision taken internally, given New York and cutting through the market and all the sports teams and just New York in general. So we wanted to make a splash, and we also wanted to have players that can also are just champions, and they're winners and set the highest standards. And Frank, Andrea, and David are just all that, and you can tell the way they played, the way, Frank now is a coach, Andrea is going to be a coach at a high level. They were incredible to have around. They were, for me, just sitting back and seeing those 3 run around on the field, and our players being able to learn from them and observe them, and us as well, and learn that what we needed to get better at as a club was amazing. And I think that's what kind of shaped the future and the foundation of that club. And so in Austin, isn't as necessary, I think. We would explore it, but it isn't something that we have to have. I think we'll be open to it, but we're going to be pretty open with signing players that may not have the star name, but certainly make the impact on the field. And that's ultimately the most important, is making an impact on the field.
Well, it's going to be a ton of fun to watch. You've gone from the big city lights of New York City, a place that you've called home. And at this point of your career, I find it fascinating to move to a project like Austin, a city with a ton of potential. And your task is to help bring it to life. I wish you all the best. And
Thank
based
you.
upon your track record, nothing but success will follow you down to the great state of Texas. Claudio, thank you so much for taking some time today. It's been very cool to spend some time with you reflecting on what has been an incredible career thus far. And we can't wait to see what the next chapter has in store.
Thank you, Gareth. Thanks for having me. And yeah, we welcome you down to Austin next year. So hopefully you can make it down there.
All right. All right. All right.
All right. All right. All right. Okay.
Thanks, Claudio. Much appreciated.
Thank you
I
so
want
much.
to thank Claudio Reyna for joining us on Inside the Game. Thank you to Tom with Austin FC for helping make arrangements as well. To my producer, David, Armin, thank them. We'll be back next Tuesday right here on Inside the Game. Follow us at OneSoccer. Like, subscribe as we get through this time staying at home together and safely. On behalf of everyone at OneSoccer, I am Gareth Wheeler reminding you to stay home and stay safe.